My parents never noticed me. Not the way that leaves bruises or headlines, but the quiet kind that teaches you to disappear while standing in the same room. Growing up, I learned how to take up less space. I spoke softer, asked for less, smiled when it hurt, and told myself that being low maintenance was a virtue. My sister never had to do that. When she walked into a room, my parents looked up. When I did, they kept talking. On my 21st birthday, I didn't expect a party. I didn't even expect a gift. I just wanted proof that I existed in their world, that this one day, out of all the others, they would see me. Instead, they gave my sister a necklace. Gold, carefully wrapped, chosen with love. And when I stood there, frozen, trying to understand how my birthday had somehow become hers, they told me I was being dramatic. That night, I walked away. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. "Evelyn," my mother said softly, "please come back." My name is Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, I felt like background noise in my own home. From the outside, our family looked warm and effortless. Two parents who never raised their voices in public. A clean house in a quiet neighborhood. Holiday photos where everyone smiled at the camera like we were doing just fine. People used to say, "Your parents are amazing." I learned early to nod and agree, because explaining the truth felt too complicated and somehow disloyal. My younger sister, Madeline, was 3 years younger than me, and everything I wasn't allowed to be. She was emotional, expressive, dramatic. When she cried, my parents rushed to her side. When she succeeded, they celebrated loudly. When she failed, they protected her from consequences. When I cried, my mother would sigh and say, "Evelyn, you're strong. You'll be fine." When I succeeded, my father would nod once and say, "That's expected of you." And when I failed, well, failure was never gentle with me. I don't remember a single moment where my parents sat me down and asked how I was really doing. Not once did they say, "You seem quiet. What's going on?" Instead, silence became my role. The reliable one, the easy one, the daughter who didn't need attention. I learned how to read rooms before speaking, how to apologize before being blamed, how to shrink myself so no one felt inconvenienced by my existence. Madeline never had to do that. She could slam doors, cry at the dinner table, refuse to speak for days, and somehow, it was always interpreted as sensitivity, depth, vulnerability. I watched my parents bend around her emotions like gravity changed when she entered the room. One night, when I was 16, I overheard my mother say to my father, "Madeline just needs more love. Evelyn doesn't really need us the same way." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else they ever said. I didn't hate my sister. That's the strange part. I didn't even resent her at first. I just assumed this was the natural order of things. Some people are born needing less, right? Some people are meant to be the quiet support beams holding everything up, while others get to shine. At least, that's what I told myself to survive. By the time I was 18, I had stopped asking for anything altogether. I worked part-time, saved my money, filled out my own college applications. When relatives asked my parents what I wanted for birthdays or holidays, my mother would laugh and say, "Oh, Evelyn's easy. She doesn't want much." What she meant was, I had learned not to want. Still, somewhere deep inside me, there was a stubborn hope I couldn't fully kill. A childish belief that one day, just one day, they would notice the effort. The restraint, the years of being good and quiet and grateful. That hope clung to one number: 21. Not because it meant adulthood, not because it meant freedom, but because I told myself that if they could remember that birthday, if they could look at me and say, "This day is yours," then maybe everything I'd endured had meant something. I didn't know then that hope can be the most dangerous thing of all. Because when it finally broke, it didn't crack quietly. It shattered. My 21st birthday fell on a Saturday, which felt like a small mercy at the time. No school, no work, no excuse for anyone to forget. I woke up late, the house already humming with quiet movement. I remember lying in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening. I waited for footsteps, for a knock on the door, for my mother's voice calling out, "Happy birthday, Evelyn." Nothing came. Eventually, I got dressed and went downstairs. The smell of coffee hung in the air. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, landing on the table where my parents and Madeline were standing together. That's when I saw the box. It was small, elegant, wrapped in deep blue paper with a silver ribbon tied perfectly at the top. My heart did something stupid. It lifted, hopeful. Before I could stop it, my mother noticed me and smiled, distracted. "Oh good, you're up," she said. "You're just in time." I stepped closer, still waiting for the words, still believing they were coming. My father turned to Madeline. "Go ahead," he said warmly. "Open it." I froze. Madeline gasped dramatically as she lifted the lid. Inside, resting on soft white velvet, was a gold necklace. Thin, delicate, unmistakably expensive. It caught the light as she lifted it, already reaching for the mirror. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's perfect." My father chuckled. "We saw it and thought of you. Thought of you." I stood there with my hands at my sides, feeling like I'd stepped into the wrong scene of someone else's life. Madeline clasped the necklace around her neck and turned in a slow circle, admiring herself. "It's beautiful," she said. "Thank you." My mother looked pleased. Then she glanced at me finally, and her smile tightened. "Don't make that face, Evelyn," she said lightly. "It's just a gift." I swallowed. Is there a cake?" I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. "Oh, we had it last night," she replied quickly. "Just something simple. You were already asleep. Last night, without me." My chest tightened, a pressure building behind my ribs. "Did it say my name?" I asked quietly. There was a pause, just long enough to hurt. Madeline laughed awkwardly. "Well, technically it had mine on it. But birthdays aren't really about names, are they?" My father sighed, irritation flashing across his face. "You're overthinking this, Evelyn. You're 21 now. You should be more mature." More mature, for wanting my own birthday to be mine. My mother crossed her arms, her tone calm but firm. "You've always been so sensitive about these things. You should be happy for your sister." I looked at the necklace again, at the way they watched her, proud, attentive, present. And in that moment, something inside me finally clicked into place. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen her. Again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't demand an explanation or ask them to fix anything. I just stood there, staring at the kitchen table, feeling something inside me slowly go still. My mother was still talking, something about how adulthood meant letting go of expectations. My father had already turned away, checking his phone like the moment was over. Madeline kept touching the necklace at her throat, glancing at me as if I were the one making things uncomfortable. That's when I understood something painful and freeing at the same time. If I said more, they would call me dramatic. If I stayed quiet, they would call me mature. Either way, nothing would change. So I smiled. It felt strange, like borrowing someone else's face. "Oh," I said softly. "You're right. It's not a big deal." My mother relaxed instantly, as if I had passed some invisible test. "See?" she said to my father. "She gets it." I excused myself and went upstairs. My room looked exactly the way I'd left it that morning, neat, careful, untouched. Posters I'd never replaced. Books I reread when I needed comfort. A desk that had held years of quiet effort no one ever noticed. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. For the first time, I let the thought finish forming. They are never going to love you the way you need. Not because you aren't worthy. Not because you didn't try hard enough. But because they decided long ago who deserved their attention, and it wasn't you. I didn't pack everything. Just enough to leave without looking back. A hoodie. A pair of jeans. My laptop. My documents. The envelope of cash I'd been saving for emergencies I never thought would include my own family. I paused in the hallway listening. Madeline was laughing downstairs. My parents' voices were warm, relaxed, comfortable. No one noticed when I picked up my bag. I wrote a short note and left it on the counter. "I need time. Please don't look for me." At the front door, my hand rested on the knob longer than I expected. A part of me still hoped someone would call my name, that I'd hear footsteps rushing toward me, that someone would say, "Wait, talk to us." The house stayed silent, so I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The air was cool, sharp against my skin. My heart was racing, but underneath the fear was something else, something dangerously close to relief. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I was done waiting to be chosen. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. The first night after I left, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch in my friend Rachel's apartment, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, uneven circles. Every sound made my heart jump: the buzz of her phone charging, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant noise of cars passing outside. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to slow down. I kept expecting my phone to light up, a missed call, a message that said, "Where are you?" Something, anything that proved they had noticed I was gone. Morning came without a single notification. Rachel handed me a mug of coffee and didn't ask questions. She just said, "You can stay as long as you need." That simple sentence felt heavier than anything my parents had said to me in years. I found a job at a small cafe downtown within a week. Early mornings, long shifts, sore feet, I didn't mind. There was something grounding about being tired for reasons I chose, about earning money that no one could hold over my head. At night, when the apartment was quiet, the doubts crept in. You overreacted. You embarrassed them. Families hurt each other sometimes. This is normal. Those thoughts sounded exactly like my mother's voice. 2 weeks after I left, my phone finally rang. "Evelyn," my mother said, her tone careful and soft, like she was approaching a skittish animal. "Your father and I are worried. You can't just disappear like this." "I didn't disappear," I replied. "I told you I needed time." "This isn't how families handle conflict," she said. "You come home, you talk it out." I laughed quietly. "We've never talked anything out." There was a pause. My father took the phone. "You've made your point," he said flatly. "Now it's time to be reasonable." "Reasonable for who?" I asked. "For everyone," he replied. "Madeline's upset, your mother's stressed. You need to stop punishing us." Punishing. As if protecting myself were an act of cruelty. "I'm not coming back," I said, my hands shaking. "Not yet." His voice hardened. "Then don't expect things to stay the same." The line went dead. That night, I sat alone on the balcony, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, and stared at the city lights. For the first time, the threat wasn't subtle. It wasn't emotional. It was something colder. I didn't know exactly what they meant, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I went back now, I would lose myself all over again. So I stayed. I found out what my father meant 2 days later. It wasn't a phone call this time. It wasn't a threat spoken out loud. It was an email. I was sitting at the small table in Rachel's kitchen, my laptop open, half dressed for work, when I saw the subject line from my university's financial aid office. At first, I thought it was a mistake, one of those automated notices you skim and forget. Then I read it again. "Due to updated information provided by your listed guardians, your financial aid status has been adjusted." Adjusted. My fingers went cold. I logged into my student portal, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The numbers had changed. Grants reduced. Aid marked as under review. A note at the bottom explained that my parents had contacted the school, stating I was no longer living at home and therefore no longer eligible under their support. I stared at the screen, not breathing. They hadn't asked how I was doing. They hadn't tried to understand why I left. They hadn't even tried to talk to me first. They went straight for the one thing they knew I needed to survive: money. I called the financial aid office immediately. The woman on the other end sounded apologetic, uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," she said. "When parents report a change like this, we're required to reassess." "But I didn't do anything wrong," I said, my voice breaking despite my effort to keep it steady. "I understand," she replied gently. "You can file an appeal, but it takes time. Time I didn't have." When I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down on the floor. This wasn't discipline. This wasn't concern. This was control wrapped neatly in paperwork and polite language. I called my father. He answered on the third ring. "Why did you contact my school?" I asked, skipping every polite word I'd been taught to use. He exhaled slowly, like I was the unreasonable one. "We're trying to help you understand reality." "By threatening my education?" I said. "No," he replied. "By reminding you that independence comes with consequences." There it was, clean, unapologetic. "You don't get to do this," I said, tears burning my eyes. "You don't get to punish me for leaving." "You walked out on this family," he said. "You don't get to take our support with you." I laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "Support?" I repeated. "You call this support?" My mother's voice cut in from the background. "Evelyn, please," she said softly. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Come home. We'll fix everything." Fix everything. Meaning, return, apologize, fall back into place. "I'm not coming back," I said. "Not like that." The silence on the line felt heavy. Then my father spoke again, colder than before. "Then don't expect us to keep pretending you're still part of this household." The call ended. I sat there long after the screen went dark, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. I realized something terrifying in that moment. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because they were losing control, and for the first time the pain wasn't just emotional. It was real, tangible, measured in tuition bills, deadlines, and the quiet threat of having my future taken away if I didn't obey. That night I didn't cry myself to sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, understanding something with painful clarity. This was no longer about love. It was about power. And if I didn't stand my ground now, I never would. I didn't go to work the next morning. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with Rachel, my laptop open, a legal pad beside me, and a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. Fear kept whispering that I was too young, too alone, too inexperienced to push back. Another voice, quieter but steadier, told me that if I didn't act now, this would follow me for the rest of my life. I searched for help. Not favors, not sympathy, process. By noon, I had an appointment at a community legal clinic near campus. The counselor, Miss Alvarez, listened without interrupting. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She asked questions, precise ones, about dates, emails, wording. When I finished, she leaned back and said something that shifted the ground beneath me. "Evelyn, you didn't abandon your family. You removed yourself from a harmful environment. That matters legally and ethically." Hasty was in actions. She explained my options. A dependency override, documentation of independent status, an appeal citing emotional coercion through financial pressure. She showed me how to write statements that were factual, calm, undeniable. "This isn't about proving they're bad people," she said. "It's about protecting your future." For the first time since my birthday, I felt something like control return to my hands. I spent the next 48 hours gathering evidence, emails, call logs, notes from conversations I'd written down while they were still fresh. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I told the truth, clean and simple. When my appeal went through, I braced myself for the wait. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. "Why are there forms from the university asking us questions?" she demanded, panic leaking through her calm tone. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I said. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "You didn't need to involve outsiders," she snapped. "This is family business." "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "This became legal when you used money to force me back." My father took the phone. "You think you're clever," he said, "dragging institutions into private matters." "I think I'm protecting myself," I said. "And my education." Silence. Then, softer dangerously, so he tried a different angle. "We raised you," he said. "We sacrificed for you. Don't you owe us a conversation?" "I owe myself a future," I answered. "And I'm done trading it for peace that never lasts." The appeal decision arrived 3 days later. Approved. My aid was restored, my tuition secured, my status changed to independent. I stared at the confirmation email until the words blurred. Relief hit me all at once, so intense I had to sit down. I hadn't won against my parents. I hadn't punished them. I had stood up with receipts, with boundaries, with the system that exists to protect people like me. That night, I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted. But beneath the exhaustion was something new and unshakable, the knowledge that I could survive without their permission. And I never had to beg to be seen again. They didn't call this time. They showed up. I was working an afternoon shift at the cafe when I looked up and saw my parents standing near the counter, completely out of place among students with laptops and half-finished drinks. My mother's hands were clasped tightly in front of her. My father's jaw was set, the way it always was when he felt embarrassed but refused to admit it. For a moment, I considered walking into the back and asking my manager to handle it. I didn't owe them this. But then I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore. "Evelyn," my mother said softly when I approached. Can we talk? I nodded and stepped outside with them, the late afternoon air warm against my skin. My father didn't waste time. You made things difficult, he said. The school, the paperwork, you didn't have to take it that far. I met his eyes. You took it far when you tried to control my future. My mother's voice shook. We were scared, she said. You left. We didn't know how to handle it. I almost laughed at that. You handled it by trying to erase my independence. Oh, there it was, the truth, spoken out loud, hanging between us. My father's shoulders sagged slightly. You could have just come home, he said, quieter now. And disappear again? I asked. Because that's what home was for me. Neither of them answered. For the first time, I saw something unfamiliar on their faces, not anger, not authority, but confusion. They had expected tears, guilt, gratitude for being allowed back. Instead, they were standing in front of a daughter who no longer needed their approval to breathe. I'm not cutting you out, I said finally. But I'm not coming back to the version of myself that made you comfortable. My mother wiped her eyes. We just want our family back. I nodded slowly. Then you'll have to learn how to see me, not manage me, not compare me. Actually see me. They didn't promise anything. They didn't apologize the way I once dreamed they would. But as they walked away, I felt something settle inside my chest. Closure doesn't always sound like forgiveness. Sometimes, it sounds like boundaries spoken clearly, and the strength to walk back inside your life without looking over your shoulder. I went back to work, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was pretending. I didn't hear from my parents for a while after that. No calls. No messages filled with guilt or advice disguised as concern. The silence felt different this time, not heavy, not threatening, just quiet. And for once, the quiet belonged to me. I moved into a small studio apartment a few months later. It wasn't fancy, thin walls, mismatched furniture, a window that rattled when buses passed, but every inch of it was mine. I paid the rent with money I earned. I studied at the desk I chose. I came home to a space where no one measured my worth against someone else's. School became hard in a different way, the kind of hard that builds you instead of shrinking you. I learned how to ask for help without apologizing. I learned that needing support doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Sometimes, I still thought about my family, about my sister, about the necklace, about the birthday that broke something open inside me. But the memory no longer burned. It just reminded me of the moment I stopped waiting to be chosen. Walking away didn't make me heartless, it made me honest. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I finally loved myself enough to stop disappearing. My name is Evelyn. I am not invisible anymore.